Good day to all. Today we are going to discuss the third quiz, which is about the physical and chemical properties. So during the third lesson, we discussed some physical and chemical properties and also practice some questions. This is also the explanatory video from this topic. It's always like recommended that to work by yourself on the quizzes and then watch the explanatory videos. So let's get started. We have approximately 12 or 13 questions. The first question. So diamonds have a hardness of 10 on the mole scale. Is that a physical or chemical property? So we said that in our last class that the hardness factor, it's always the physical property. So that's why it will be physical. Next, acid chlorides react quickly with water to form hydrochloric acid. Is that a physical or chemical property? So we have known that so all chemical reactions, so whether they are forming the hydrochloric acid or other type of the chemicals, they will always be chemical property. Next, ethyl propanate smells like pineapples. Is that a physical or chemical property? Actually, this is the main keyword is smells. It means that any smell, like the smell of any chemical compound, it will be its physical property. Sodium azide in airbags decomposes rapidly, forming nitrogen. This is an example of what type of property? So decomposition rapidly forming nitrogen gas. If there is a forming of some chemicals, again, we say that this is chemical property. Next, a candle burning is an example of what type of change? So a candle burning, so burning or let's say combustion reactions, the reaction with oxygen always will be chemical property. Water condensing on a glass is an example of what type of the change. So be careful at this point because the condensation process, physical process, therefore it will be physical property. Also, we can get the answer from the condensation temperature, for example. The boiling point of acetone is 56 degrees Celsius. This is an example of what type of property. So as it's given like the boiling point of acetone and the temperature is given, we said that boiling point, melting point, all type of physical processes will be physical property. And we discussed that any physical property will be divided into two sections. The first one is intensive, second one is extensive property. So intensive properties, they are not dependent on the amount of substance. However, the extensive properties are dependent on the mass or amount of substance. So when we look at the boiling point, it's like temperature. And as you know, the mass of the substance doesn't affect the temperature of any chemical compound. Therefore, it will be intensive property. Emeralds are green. This is an example of what type of property. So again, as we said, emeralds are green. Green is its color, and this is physical property. So coming to the intensive and extensive, the color is not also dependent on the mass of the substance. Therefore, it will be intensive property. The density of silver is 10.5 grams per centimeter cube. This is an example of density is physical property. So in general, density is not dependent on the mass or volume. As you know, this is M over V, mass over volume, but it is not dependent on the mass. Therefore, it will be physical property with intensive property. If it was asked to find like what is the volume, it's the type of which change or which property, it will be extensive because volume is dependent on the mass, but density not. An intensive property, so let's choose the correct variant, involves a chemical reaction when it is measured. No, depends on the amount of substance present. Actually, this is extensive property. It doesn't depend on the amount of sample. Yes, that's correct. It doesn't depend on the amount of sample. And none of the above, it's not correct because we have already chosen the variant C. Physical change. So we need to fill the blank. Change the way atoms are bonded to form molecules. No. This is like a bonding reaction or like bonding in potential energy or something. Always involve a reaction occurring. This is chemical change. don't change with the chemical properties of a sample. Yes, that's correct. So for example, let's look at some physical properties like color, smell that we discussed, density, temperature, boiling point, melting point, and etc. They are not like changing the chemical properties of the samples. They are the physical properties. If it's asked to which property change the chemical properties, it will be chemical change. Last two questions. Which of the following is not a chemical change? So it means we need to find physical one. Water evaporating. So evaporation is physical process. The temperature change will be foreseen. And also at this point, the phase will be changed. Sorry, not temperature change, it will be phase change. It means it's physical property. Nails rusting. So rust. This is very important. So for example, rust of the iron. Actual rusting is affected by the oxygen reaction with oxygen with the ferrum iron, as you know. The ferrum oxides, they will be the main reason for rusting. This will be chemical. Fireworks exploding, this will be chemical. This is the like reaction with oxygen. Combustion of gas in a car's engine, this is also the reaction. Therefore, the water evaporating will be physical process. And the last question, melting point is an example of melting point. So we said that the melting point, melting temperature, this will be the physical property, and also it doesn't depend on the mass of the substance, therefore it will be intensive property. So let's look for the answer, not extensive, intensive, correct, and physical. That's all from the third lesson quiz. In the next lesson, we'll discuss some physical properties like pressure, temperature, density, specific volume, specific gravity, compressibility, and etc. See you. Goodbye.